What is going on, guys? So we're back with part 3 of our Discord dashboard tutorial. So we're going to do a UI video for this one. And right off the bat, I want to mention something real quick is you'll notice that I actually have these icons from my Discord servers, okay? This is coming from the backend. Now, I know we haven't gone to that part yet, so I want you guys to ignore all of this, okay? If you, for example, see anything in the code that has to do with the backend stuff, you can just ignore it. Okay, but this is literally just going to be stuff for the back end. We're going to get all the data from the back end when we actually implement it. Okay, before this tutorial, you don't have to worry about it. But what we're going to do is we're going to work on this UI, and this is basically going to be a drop-down menu, a custom one. Okay, and what you can do with this is you can update your configurations for anything that has to do with rules. Okay, so for example, let's say if you want to update the default role, so this is a role that's given to the member whenever they join the server, you would click on whatever role you want. So let's click on React. You can click Save, and then when you click Save, it'll make an API call to your server. Let's say, for example, if you have a lot of roles and you want to like scroll through it, okay, you can type in the role that you want. So for example, guest, and you can click that, and you can click Collapse. Or save. If you click collapse, it'll reset the state, which I find it convenient. You don't have to do that. You can configure it to your needs. But yeah, and then you can also update the moderator role if you have any. Same thing with the muted role, which is a role given to users that are muted. So that's pretty much going to be it for this tutorial. It should be pretty easy. So let's go ahead and jump right into the tutorial. Okay, so we're gonna go into our project, and what I'm gonna do is you'll actually, well, first let me show you guys something real quick. You'll actually notice that if I click over here, I'll have this muted route. And again, like I said, I don't have the icons here because this part is not connected to the backend. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and first get rid of these two because I want to just keep this clean, and I want it to make sense. So I'm gonna get rid of this part inside the constants.tsx file. This is where all of the menu items are coming from. So I'm gonna get rid of this. I'm going to change this from general/muted to just general, and we'll just change this to general. So before we had two routes, now we're just going to have one, and we're going to have to go to our app.tsx file, and we're going to have to fix our routes. So what I'm going to do is I'll just get rid of this part over here, because remember we have only /general and not general muted. So if I click here, it should map perfectly, and all these will map. These two won't map because these are not mapped with a route. Okay, and yeah, that should be pretty much it. Maybe later on in the video, like at some point, we can find a better way to dynamically map all of these paths. Okay, so we have to like explicitly, list all of these, but for now it's okay. Okay, so right now we're gonna go inside our general tab, and what I want to do is I want to go to the dashboard.tsx file. Remember, because the dashboard.tsx file, which is right over here, is the file, it's the page that is being mapped to for all these routes. Now, obviously, down the line, you wouldn't use this specific page for everything. You would create different pages. You would create something like you would create a security roles page. You would create a security authentication page. I only have these currently here just as placeholders. I want to make that clear. Okay, so if I wanted to, I could just delete that. Okay, I don't really need it there. Okay, and again, it would only affect these two pages. It wouldn't affect this one. Okay, but you can create your own pages over here, inherit all of the styling from the theme, and you'll be fine. Okay, so over here in dashboard.tsx file, what we're going to do is we're going to need to create a content area. So basically, I want to put the menu right over here, and when we put that menu over there, we need to wrap all of the menus because we're going to have multiple. We're going to wrap all the menus inside its own container. So I think what I'll just do for now is I'm going to go into styles.tsx. And what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and create a new component, a style component. And I'll just call this dashboard content. And then we'll give this a div. We'll make it a div. Okay. And let's see what's going on over here. Okay. There we go. And we're going to go ahead and just export, import that inside this file. And you can see it was imported up there, which is great. And inside this dashboard content, we're going to have our menu. Okay, but we're going to want to give it some padding. So I think the best thing that we could do for padding is we can be consistent. So for example, you'll notice, why does this always do this? It's so slow. Okay, so you'll notice right over here, I have padding over here. I think it's 20 pixels if I remember correctly. So we're just going to give padding of 20 pixels just to be consistent. Okay, though ideally we should be following our theme. We should be doing a theme-based approach, but this should be okay because that only had padding from the top and not the left and right. Top and bottom, but not left and right. Okay, that's good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start creating our menu component. Okay, so the menu component is going to look pretty simple. It's not going to look anything crazy. So what we're going to do is we're going to go inside components, okay, and we're going to create a component called Dropdown. We can call it Dropdown Menu. Doesn't really matter, but I'll call it Dropdown.tsx. Okay, and this Dropdown Menu.tsx file, we're first going to go ahead and import React. So, whoops. Okay, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just create a named export const dropdown, and then we're going to go ahead and just use an arrow function for a component, and we'll be fine for this part. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a props type. And this is going to be a props type that's going to have two properties inside here. So we're going to have title, which is going to be a string, and we're going to have items, which is going to be a menu item type. Okay, so this menu item type, we're going to create that over inside types.tsx. So we'll do that, and again, don't worry, I'm going to explain what it is that we're doing. So let's just first create the menu item type. And this menu item type is going to be a very simple and straightforward type. All we're going to do is we're going to have the name and then a value. Okay, so what exactly are we doing here? Well, for our component, we're going to create a props type. Okay, so that way we can actually know exactly what props are being passed into this component, and we can also it'll also type check it for us. So for example, we can't just pass in random props, and even if we do pass in props, they have to match the specific type. So I'm creating this props over here. So I'm going to also pass it props and give it a props annotation, type annotation like that. So now whenever I want to render this dropdown, I need to pass in these two props. Okay, so that's going to make it strict for us. And then over here we have title, which is a string. Title is going to be the actual title that you'll see for the configuration. So for example, update default role, that's the title. Update moderator role, that's the title. And then update muted role, that's the title as well. Okay, so that's going to be the title part. Menu item, the items part, this is going to be all of the options that the user can select. So for example, these are all of the menu items. And then what we do is we type annotate menu item, and then we can say, oh, menu item has two properties as a name and a value. And that makes sense because for our options, right, typically if you use an actual select, you'll have the name and you have the value, so we're going to be consistent. And yeah, so the name would be, guest, and the value would be some unique value. Okay, and when we actually get the actual data from our API, the value is actually going to be the ID of the role, and then the name is just going to be the name of the role. The ID is going to allow us to actually know which role to apply to the user or to update in the database. So for example, if the role ID is 123, then on the database we'll set the configurations role to 123, for example. Okay, so we're getting this red line over here is because we need to import that. So let's do that. There we go. And perfect. All right, so what do we do next? Well, let's go ahead and actually just return just an empty div real quick. Okay, we still got a lot more styling to do. Well, the first thing that we need to do is we need to create the styles for our dropdown. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So for example, we are going to need to have a dropdown header. So that's going to be this part. We're going to need a dropdown content area, so like a container to hold all these items. And then we'll need a footer for these actions. Okay, so let's focus on the header first. So we're going to go into styles.tsx, and let me actually move that over here, and we can close types.tsx because we don't need it anymore, and I'll close dashboard.tsx. Okay, so we're going to go over here, we're going to go and export const, and we'll do dropdown header, and this will just be simple styled.div. If you want, you could use like a section if you want, but I'm just going to use a div. Okay, so for the background color, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to hard code this temporarily, and I'm going to give it this color over here. I already have this color picked out already. Okay, so that's the same color as the one you saw in the demo. Okay, so we're going to give it a background color of this dark color. And what we're going to do is we're going to give it a padding of 8 pixels, top and bottom, and then 20 pixels left and right. Okay, so we'll do the trick, and we're going to give it a border radius of 5 pixels. And we'll give it a font size of 16 pixels, and then a font weight of bold. And I think that should be it. We'll also give it a cursor pointer. Okay, so that should be fine, and I know, don't worry, I'm going to render it right now so you guys can see what it looks like. So let's go ahead and do this drop down header. Okay, and let's go ahead and render our drop down inside the dashboard page. So we're going to go inside dashboard, and what we're going to do is inside dashboard content is we're going to say drop down. And now it's going to complain because we need to pass in our props, right? It's saying that we need to pass in props, so we need the title, and we also need items. So let me just go ahead and pass that title. So I'll just do update default role. And I need to also pass in items. So I'm actually going to go ahead and copy and paste what I already had already. So I'm going to go into constants.tsx, and I'll slow down just a little bit so you guys can follow along. But I'm going to go inside constants.tsx. This is where I'm going to paste in all of my static data, or like, just mocks, I guess. And you can see over here, I have my select menu items array, which is just an array of menu items. So let me just import that type. So we want to get that red line, and that will be imported up here. And you can see we have an array of menu items, and you can look that every single object follows the type for menu item, name and value. If I were to do something like, hello world, it would throw an error, or it would not even compile, because you can see over here that you cannot assign this type of object to this array of menu items. That's the beauty of TypeScript. Okay, but you can see I just have a couple of items here, and we're going to go ahead and close that out, and we're going to import this into our dashboard.tsx. And like I said, when we actually connect the backend, we are going to actually have to fetch all the data, and then we're going to have to pass it in as a prop inside Dropdown, which will be very, very easy. Okay, but we're setting everything up so that when we actually get to the backend, everything's going to be done already on the front end. We just need to get the data. Okay, so let's go ahead and pass in our items. So we're going to pass it in from the dashboard page. So we're going to do select menu items, and we're going to import that up there, and then there we go. So, and don't worry about this part though, like my IntelliSense is pretty slow, but yeah, this should be okay. All right, so now if I were to go into my application, so this is the demo, so you can see right now, you can see when I hover over it, there's a cursor, okay, of pointer, and then you can see that there's stuff here, but we don't have anything. It's not showing like the actual full width or full height, because we need to actually pass in, we need to actually render the title. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and use a p tag, and I'll just go ahead and do props, or actually not props, let me actually destructure this, title and items. Okay, so let's do, let's do title. Okay, and then if I go here, you'll see it says update default role. If I zoom out, it'll look looks slightly different. I actually don't think I like the bold, if I'm being honest with you. So I'm going to go ahead and actually just get rid of the bold, because it's too bold. I was expecting it to be just a little bit light, but I think this is okay. I think this should be okay. You can play around with it yourself. Okay. All right. So now that we're done with the header, what's next? Well, we got to work on the drop-down container, right? That's where it's going to hold all of the items. Well, the drop-down item container. Okay. So that's basically going to hold all of the drop-down options for us to select. All right, so let's go ahead and implement that. So we're going to go inside styles.tsx. We're going to go and do export const drop down item container. And we're going to go ahead and do style.div. And we are going to need to pass in some custom props to this. So I'm going to just type annotated to any. Okay, if you guys actually have a better way on how to do this in TypeScript, please let me know, because I really try my best to avoid using any. But I haven't been able to find any examples on how to properly use TypeScript with styled components whenever it comes to passing custom props. So let me know down in the comments, and yeah, I'll take it. I'll take the feedback for consideration. But what we're gonna do here is for this drop-down item container, the key point of this component is that it's only going to display whenever we click on the header. So by default, we're going to actually give it a max height of 0 pixels. So that way it'll look like it's not even there. And we're going to need to set the overflow Y to scroll. So that way we can actually scroll. Okay, if you wanted to actually hide the content, you would do overflow hidden. But we want to make it so that they can scroll. Okay, and then we're going to also do one more thing. We'll set the opacity to 0, though if I go over here, you can see that it doesn't really matter. Well, I'll actually show you the transition, and if you want to keep it, you can, and I'll show you why you might not want the transition when it comes to having max height. Okay, but let's go ahead and leave it like this for now. And all we're going to do in this component is we're going to go ahead and first take in this props parameter over here. And this prop, drop-down item container is going to take in a prop called expanded. So we're going to do props.expanded. So if this is a truthy value, we're going to go ahead and basically expand the height as well as the opacity. So the height is going to be some constant value like 200 pixels, and the opacity will be 1. And that makes sense. When you expand the drop-down item container, you want to show all of the content. And when you want to collapse it, you will basically set the height and the opacity back to, 0 or 2. Yeah, you'll set it back to 0. Okay, so I'm going to use this CSS, this, I guess you can call it a function, which comes from styled components. And this allows us to basically define a bunch of styles that we want based on this condition over here. Or you can use it without a ternary operator or condition, but I'm going to do it like this. So for example, if props.expanded is true, then that means we're going to set the max height to 200 or 220 pixels, and opacity set to 1. And then we'll also do CSS max height 0 and then opacity 0. So let's explain what's going on here. So we're going to go inside our dropdown.tsx and we're going to import dropdown item container. And this dropdown item container is going to take in the expanded prop. Okay, and I'm going to set that to true just for now. The reason why I need to use any here is because if I don't, it's going to complain in the dashboard, or not dashboard, the dropdown.tsx is going to say that I was not able to pass in this expanded. Yep, there you go. So that's why I need to use any. Okay, but like I said, if you guys have a better solution, let me know. Okay, so let's look at our, let's get here real quick. Okay, so right now, we don't have any items. Let me actually just do an H1, just see if this renders at least. Okay, there we go. So you can see it renders. That's good. If I set this expand to false, you'll see that it disappears, and that's working exactly the way we want it to. So whenever expanded is true, it's going to expand the height. It's going to say, hey, like the max height will be 220 pixels. Okay, this div cannot be more than 220 pixels. The opacity is also 1, okay, which means that it's going to actually display, right? So let's go ahead and set the transition to 300 milliseconds. And let's just see if this actually transitions. It should, though. Yeah, there you go, transitions. Okay, so the transition works fine right now, but if you actually have more content, there's going to be like this weird delay, and if I remember correctly, there's a why that'll happen. You know what? I'll actually show you guys once I actually I'll show you I'll show it to you when I actually once I render the data. But for now, let's just set expand to true. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and create the drop-down item component. So that's going to basically be the component that we're going to use to pass in the actual drop-down content. Okay, we don't want to just use a random div over here because I want to add styling to it. So we're going to go and do export const drop-down item. Okay, and like I said, the drop-down item container is just a container for all of these drop-down items. Each drop-down item is actually going to be the option that the user can select. Okay, and we're going to add the functionality to it after. So let's make this a div. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and give it a background color. I already have it picked out already, so let me just go ahead and do that. So background color. So you can actually see it's the same. I think it's the same as our drop-down header, I think. Yeah, that's fine. And I'm going to go ahead and just give it some other styling. I'm actually going to go ahead and copy and paste this because I don't want to rewrite every single one of these things. And CSS should be pretty straightforward. But yeah, we pretty much set a color of white, so that's a text. We're going to give it a border. We're going to give it a border on the bottom, okay, right over here. We're going to give it a padding of 5 pixels top and bottom, and then 20 pixels left and right. And whenever they hover over it, it's going to change the background color as well as the pointer. I actually think I can just change this to 1 pixels. I don't think with borders you can go anything under 1 pixels. Okay, so yeah, hopefully that part makes sense. I don't want to spend so much time writing everything over and over again. But we're gonna go ahead and take in a prop. So this prop is just going to basically allow us to check to see if the prop, or not the prop, if the item is selected. So that way, let me actually show you go back to demo. If I actually do this, it'll actually change the background color. So whenever we pass in this props that is selected, so if it is selected, what we're gonna do is we're gonna change the background color to whatever we want. Okay, so we're going to change it to this color that I already have picked out already. And I'm going to go ahead and just make this any. There we go. So that should be pretty straightforward. So for example, inside the drop-down item component, I'm going to pass in is selected. Okay, and if it is selected, it's just going to make it look like it's active, right? It's basically going to give it a different background color. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this component over here. Hopefully it made sense. Let's go ahead and go back into the dropdown.tsx file, and let's pass in dropdown. We're going to go ahead and map through items, and we're going to go ahead and map through this. So basically, we're going to return a dropdown item component. Did it import up there? It did not, so we're going to have to just do that ourselves. And so for all these drop-down items, first let's pass in a key. So for the key, I'll just pass in item.value. So this assumes that there's no duplicates. We're also going to need 2 other properties as well. But before I do that though, before I add the functionality, let me actually go ahead and just render item.name. And let's look at what it looks like. So there you go. You can see that we have all of our stuff. And right now, if I click on it, it's not going to give me the active background. That's because we aren't passing the isSelected prop. And we also need to modify this scroll bar. But let's start off with the dropdown first. So, or not the dropdown item. So first, let's go ahead and do this. Let's go up here in our dropdown, up here, and let's create a state variable. So let's do const, let's do selected, set selected, and I'm gonna go ahead and import use state from React. Okay, so use states, and I'm going to make this a menu item or undefined. Okay, so by default it will be undefined. That's okay. So what I'm going to do is for the dropdown item, basically whenever I select, or whenever I click on one of the drop-down items, so on click, and that's the reason why I don't like using any, because it doesn't give me IntelliSense, which I really don't like personally, but it's okay. But whenever we click on this item, we're gonna basically go ahead and set the selected. So on click, set selected equal item. And to kind of like visualize our changes, we can just do this. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do selected and selected dot name. The reason why we have to do selected and selected dot name is because this could be undefined. If I were to get rid of this part, you can see it's going to give you a red line. It should give you a red line soon. My IntelliSense is just slow, but it'll say object is possibly undefined. Okay, so you want to be safe, so you just do, you'll only render this part only if selected is truthy. Okay, so now if I go over here, if I do this, you can see it says it right over here. Okay, but we're gonna need to put this all the way to the side, but we'll worry about that last. So whenever we click on here, we set the selected, and right now it's working just fine. So I select Java. Okay, if I select developer, it's going to display up here, so it knows which item we currently have selected. Okay, so now what we're going to do next is we're going to pass in the is selected prop, and this is just going to be Boolean value. And all we'll do is we'll just say selected, and because remember this could be possibly undefined, and you want to try your best to avoid using the question mark operator. Okay, you want to try your best using the exclamation mark operator as well, because you could still run into null errors. Okay, and this is if you're using TypeScript. But we'll do selected and item dot name. So right now we're doing item dot name, but we're actually going to do item dot value actually instead of item dot name. I actually did item dot name before, but we're gonna do item dot value. So item dot value equals selected dot value. Okay, and it works the same way. Item dot name, selected name. It will work the same way. Okay, but unless if you have duplicate values, which you shouldn't. Yeah, anyway, so now you can see that we actually have the active background color. Okay, and there you go. So it works just fine. So we're pretty much done with the drop-down item component. So that should be pretty straightforward. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do, well, let's do this first. Let's first tidy up our header, and let's fix the scroll bar. And once we're done with that, we'll work on the footer, where we can actually create the save, collapse, and the search bar, or the search input field. So first, let's go and fix up the header. So let's go over here, and we'll just simply do a display of flex, and then justify content will be space between. So this will space those two items on the opposite side. There you go. And let's go ahead and modify our scroll bar. So I'm just gonna go ahead and copy and paste this over here, but that's because you guys can customize it however you want. But basically, we're going to just give the scroll bar width of 5 pixels, as you can see over here. So if you want, you can change this to 25 pixels if you want, and you can see that it gets thicker. Okay, but I'm going to leave it as, let's do 5 pixels. For the scroll bar thumb, this is how it's going to look like. You can change the background color to whatever you want. So if I change it to white, you'll see right over here, that's what it looks like. You can also change the border radius too, but I'm going to leave it as this color for now. Okay, so that should be fine. So that's pretty much it for the scroll bar as well as the header. Okay, I don't want to spend too much time on it, especially on the CSS part, because I really want to get to the functionality, which I think is more important. Okay, but let's go ahead and work on the footer now. So for the footer, let's go over into our styles over here. The footer is going to be pretty straightforward. So we're going to do export const dropdown footer styled, and I'll just do a div. All right, so for the dropdown footer, this is going to be a pretty straightforward component. Like I said, I don't want to spend too much time going over every single CSS file, so I'm just going to copy and paste this over here just to save time, and you'll see what it looks like. It literally will speak for itself, okay? But what I'm going to do down here is I'm going to go ahead and show the dropdown footer. So let's do dropdown footer. Okay, and the dropdown footer should show, let me just open this up real quick. So you can see over here, this is the dropdown footer, I think. Yep, right on here. All right. And let's go ahead and we're going to pass in a couple of items. So we're going to go ahead and pass in some buttons. So if you look back over here, we have 2 buttons and we have a input field. So we're going to actually need to style our buttons. So I'm actually going to go ahead and go over here and export const button. Yeah, so you can also style buttons as well as inputs. And again, I already have this already, so I'm gonna just copy and paste it because I don't want to spend too much time on the CSS, but you can look through it. It should speak for itself. Okay, we have font family, padding, border color or background color, border. Okay, and we have outline set to none. And you can see over here, if I were to render this right over here, let's do save. You'll see what it looks like. There you go. Okay. So like I said, you can style your button however you want. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on this because you guys will probably end up changing up the style anyways. But yeah, this is what it looks like, and it should be pretty straightforward. Okay, so we'll have a save button, and we'll also have a collapse button, and these will do different things. And again, I'm also going to create the input, which I already have already, so I'm just going to copy and paste that here. And I'm going to go ahead and for the input, we're going to put that on the opposite side from the buttons. So we're going to create 2 divs for that. Or sorry, 1 div for save and collapse button, and then another div for the input. So let me go ahead and just import the input component, which let's see, let's do that right up here, and let's go ahead and do that, and then there we go. All right, so like I said, you can customize this however you want, but I'm just gonna do it this way. Okay. So one more thing I'm going to do is for the button over here for save, I'm going to just give it some custom styling. I'm going to just do a margin right of 5 pixels because right now these 2 things are right next to each other. There you go. Okay, so let's focus on the functionality. So right now we have a problem. It's going to show this footer over here all the time. I actually only want to show whenever this update default role is expanded. So we actually need to do 2 things. One, we need to know when this drop-down menu is expanded, because right now it's only showing. Well, actually, let me do this. Let me actually set expanded to false, and you'll see what I mean. So you'll see that we have this this over here being shown even whenever we don't have the items expanded. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to actually add some more functionality. So instead of hard coding this right now, I think what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and create a state variable. We'll just do const expanded, set expanded. Okay, and we're going to call use state. So equals use state, boolean. And by default, expanded will be set to false. So when they first visit the page, when the component renders, it will not be expanded. So let's pass in expanded right over here as a prop. Okay, and how do we expand the actual content? Well, on the drop-down header, we're gonna add an on-click event listener, and whenever they click on it, we're gonna call set expanded, and we're just going to set it to not expanded. So that's just going to kind of like toggle it. So now from here, if I click on here, you're gonna see we have the nice animation. Okay, cool. But like I said, it still shows this, so we can actually just make it so that whenever the expanded variable is truthy, we will only render footer. So now if I do this, there we go. It took a little bit to update, but there you go. It works just fine. Okay, pretty cool. It's looking a lot like our demo now. All right, so now we just also need to add a functionality to our buttons. So what we'll do is let's first add functionality to the collapse button. So we'll do on click. We will just simply do let's do set expanded, and we'll just set this to false. We can hard code false because we know this is going to collapse it. And then for input, let me also add a placeholder. Just call it search. There we go. And there we go. So it's looking a lot like our current demo that we had earlier. Okay, so I think ultimately we're done with all of the basic things. So we have collapse, we have save, we have selected. So for example, let's say if you wanted to call the API, let's say if you select React and you click save, you would want to register a click event on this button. So you would do something like on click, and then you would create a function called like handle save, for example, right up top over here, handle save. Okay, and then what you would do is you would make the API call inside handle save, and you would reference selected, because this is where we know which item is selected, because we're keeping track of the selected item in the state variable, right? So for example, if I go ahead and if I select guest and if I click save, it's going to log guest, and then we can make the API call to update whatever it is that we need to do. Okay, but like I said, when we actually have the Discord guild roles, we're gonna have all of the IDs in replacement for the values over here. Okay, but hopefully that makes sense. A couple other things that we're going to do is we want to add the search functionality. So if I type React, it'll filter everything out and it'll show React. Okay, and we're also going to need to disable this button. So if they don't select anything, we don't want them to click it. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll disable this button first. So that's going to be real easy. So over here for this save button, we'll just do disable equals, and if let's see, if there's no selected value, then it'll be disabled. So if I refresh, you're going to see I cannot click on it right now, and this disabled color is coming from this CSS selector right over here. Okay, so if I want, I can actually also change that to whatever color I want, and you'll see that the color changes though. But yeah, so like I said, you can customize the CSS however you want. Okay, and you can look up all of these selectors. I just don't want to spend so much time on the CSS part because I know some people may get bored of it, but this should be okay. I'm actually just going to change it back to gray for now. Okay, all right, and so yeah, this pretty much works. So I can't click on this now. If I do React, then I can click on it. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so now the last thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna work on this search feature. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a couple things. One, we're gonna go ahead and go up here, and we're gonna create a state variable called set search, or search and then set search. So this is going to be the state variable that's going to keep track of our search, or whenever we type into the search bar or the input field, and we'll just set the use state default value to a empty string. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and also create another state variable called search results and set search results. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and do use state, and this will be an array of menu items, and the default value will be, well, the initial state will be items. Okay, so right now for our props, we're not actually saving them into any state variable, we're just rendering them. But for here, we're going to actually assign these menu items into this state variable over here. Okay, and that's going to be okay. It won't affect, we want to make sure we're not modifying the props, though I think we won't even be able to if we tried, but this should be okay. And what we're going to do is right over in the input field, we're going to go ahead and add an onChange listener, and we're going to call handle change, which is going to be a function that we're going to go and implement up over here. So const handle change, and this handle change function is going to take in an event, and it's going to be of type react.form events, and we're going to just give it the HTML input element because this is generic. And we're going to go ahead, and with this event object, we're going to go ahead and get the value from event.currentTarget. So let me go ahead and just console log the value real quick. And before I do anything else, I also need to register this search variable onto this input. So we're going to go ahead and do value is going to be mapped to search. So this is the way we can bind the state variable to this input field. Okay, so right now if I do this, let me open up my console. Right now it's only going to show the letter that I'm writing. So if I type E, it's only going to show E. That's because we're not updating the state variable. But you can see that it is calling this handle change. So all I need to do is do set search to value, and now you'll see if I type Arizona, you can see it's being updated over here, which is perfect. Okay, so what we do is we just simply do this. We go ahead and we declare a variable called const filter, call it whatever you want. We're going to reference items, so that's the items prop that's being passed in. And we're going to go and call it filter. And we're going to go ahead and basically just map through all of these, not map through, we're going to go through all these items and we're going to basically say, hey, look, we only want the items that include whatever the user is searching, but we also need to take care of cases. So for this, you could probably use a regular expression, but I'm just going to cheat a little bit, and I'm just going to set everything to lowercase. So I'm going to set item.name.to lowercase, and we're going to call it .includes. So if it includes value.to lowercase. So what exactly are we doing over here? Well, what we're doing is we're basically filtering all of the items from the props array, and we're only going to get back items where it includes whatever the user is searching, and everything is going to be set to lowercase, so it'll ignore cases. Okay, so for example, now if I just do set search results and I pass in filtered, okay, and now you're going to see that nothing's going to change. If I refresh, nothing's going to change. And the reason why, right? The reason why is because we actually need to get rid of items over here and we need to replace it with search results. Okay. And that's the reason why I initially set the initial state for search results to items. So we're going to go and do search results. Let's save. And great, we have all of our state variables and their functions being referenced, which is great. I personally don't like having unused variables, but now if I do developer, there we go. If I just do DE, you can see we have node, a moderator, developer. And again, you can use regular expressions if you want, and you can customize this however you want. If I do React, if I delete everything, it'll just reset back to normal, which is great. Let's see what else. Guest, Angular, yeah, it works fine. And again, I can select that as well. That is going to be pretty much it. And the last thing that I'll do, and this is what I had in my original implementation, is I'm going to create a function called reset state. And all this is going to do is just going to reset the state. So we're going to set expanded to false. We're going to set search results to the original items. We're going to set selected to undefined. And we're going to set search to an empty string. So this is just going to reset everything. Again, you don't have to do this. And we're going to reset the state whenever we click on the collapse button. So if I click collapse, you can see that we have reset the state. Okay, collapse. That resets this over here. Though it does have this weird animation, which I don't really like. That's why I don't really like the transition though. So I'm going to go ahead and show you, like I said earlier, why the animation looks a little bit weird sometimes, or when it might look weird. So let's say, for example, if I have this developer, right? So let's refresh. So you can see how there's this like little delay. It doesn't look really smooth. If this doesn't bother you, then you can keep the animation, though it kind of bothers me a little bit if I'm being honest with you, so that's why I don't really like it. It looks smooth like this. The reason why is because we're using max height, because if I remember correctly, there's still some height that it's animating on. So that's why there's this like little weird delay. A workaround that I had was using padding, but you can't really use padding for this, I think, because we have a bunch of items. But if this doesn't bother you though, then more power to you. All right, so that is going to be pretty much it for this whole tutorial. I really hope you guys liked it. Yeah, I just thought I would add more functionality to this thing, and yeah, like I said, I hope you guys are satisfied with this result. I personally like it a lot, if I'm being honest with you. It looks really sleek. Okay, in future videos we will be focusing more on theme-based approach, because right now we kind of just hard-coded all of the colors, but I really should be using more of the theme props. That's gonna be pretty much it for this whole video. I don't know what I'll do next. I think maybe if I can think of some ideas, I'll add it to the UI and I'll make a video about it. But the next part of these videos, we're gonna actually start working on the backend at some point. So yeah, hopefully you guys like this video. If you guys do, please definitely leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel, and if you guys really want to, you can also join as a member for $1 a month. It really helps out a lot. And that is pretty much it. So I will see you guys in my next video. Peace out.